So we're going to go to Autodesk Programs. You should find an area there called Inventor 2020. Then we're going to be working with the professional version. So if you have a chance to download this, which I would recommend, download the professional version, because it has more of the hooks in it, and it's a better program of the two. Okay. Everybody getting that loaded up, let me know when we're all set. You guys finding it all okay? Everybody? Okay. So Inventor, unlike CAD, is a parametric modeling kind of guy. So it's a bit different. First off, it's dealing with what we call solid modeling. It also is parametric, so that what means that something here can drive something else that can drive something else. They're all linked. So in CAD, when we're drawing, a line is very static. I mean, that line knows how long it is, and it knows its two endpoint coordinates, but it doesn't really know that it's connected to anything else or how it interacts with anything else other than what you tell it to do. With Inventor, what we're going to see is that these things are linked together, and that one thing can drive the other. The other thing that's actually very cool about this is that unlike CAD, when we go and draw a part and we dimension it, the part drives the size of the dimensions, but not vice versa. So in Inventor, what we're going to do is we're going to generate these really simple sketches, they call them, and we're going to apply dimensions to them, and those are going to drive the part. So we can have it both ways in Inventor, okay? So that's going to be really cool. So what we're going to do is, at this point, everybody should be at a screen like this. Is that correct? And we're just going to go into it real quick. We're not going to worry about anything. And we're going to just take a look at the beginning aspect of this. I want to go over the condition, or basically the graphical user interface. Now, first off, let me explain this. There are 4 different types of things you can draw in Inventor. What is called a part, which is basically just a simple assembly of something. Okay, so it could be something just like a cell phone case, or it could be a pencil, it could be anything. Then you can have what's called an assembly, and an assembly is a bunch of parts that are brought together as one object. So like this thing up here, that the projector, you have the projector itself, you have a lens, you have this arm that holds it, all of that stuff goes together. That can be an assembly with each one of those little separate parts different, okay? And then when you print this thing out, notice there's a drawing, and that's a DWG file, okay? So it's just an AutoCAD drawing file. Basically, that's going to put you in paper space, okay? Now, they don't call it that, but that's what it's going to be, essentially. And it's going to create viewports and all of this stuff. You're going to import your model, but it's a whole lot simpler. But having gone through that process, you're going to see that that's true. Then you can do animations, which are called presentations. So you can animate parts. You can also do what's called exploded views. We can do some pretty cool stuff with this. Okay, we're going to concentrate this semester on drawing parts, just lots and lots and lots of parts. And once you understand that, you can do anything else you need to. Well, the other thing we're going to be doing is doing drawings of those parts. But again, Inventor does all the drawing. You just open up the drawing file and pop it in, and it goes. Okay. Even the dimensioning itself is actually very cool, very easy. All right, so we're going to go in. We're just going to open up. I'm going to go to New here. And as we go to this, notice you're going to have different types of file types. If it's set to English, that's fine. You're just going to notice there's your part. It's called an IPT file. Then you have your assembly, which is an IAM file. Then you have your drawings, your documentation. Those are DWG files. So it doesn't matter what we click on. You can click on a standard IPT and then just hit create. What we're going to do is just go in and look at the interface, okay? So the interface is going to be kind of similar to AutoCAD. You're going to see similarities, you're going to see differences. So what we're looking at is the graphical user interface. So let's start over here. This area, this is your file dialog box or file section. If you click on that, notice it gives you file handling. Now that should look exactly similar to AutoCAD. That's called the application menu in AutoCAD. This is called the file dialog box. Okay, so it's the same thing now. New, open, save, save as, export. Same kind of concept, right? Everybody can see that. All right, if we go, you can just click anywhere out here. Top here, we have this guy, which we called this the Quick Access Toolbar in AutoCAD, and it's also called the Quick Access Toolbar in Inventor. And it does the same thing as the file dialog box does, but basically you have open, save as, those kind of things. Same kind of concept, okay? You can also customize it if you go to that drop down. You can add buttons to that, or you can delete them, okay? If you don't like to see what's there, you want to add a few things. You can also show the quick access toolbar below the ribbon. So you can leave it above or top, all right? Over here, those are your help areas, just like we had in AutoCAD. So there's ways to search, those kind of things. So the big area that you'll be dealing with in Inventor is just like AutoCAD. The main menu main menu is in the ribbon. So this is our ribbon, the standard ribbon that we have, and it's broken down into tabs, 3D model, sketch, annotate, and those tabs then are broken down into panels. So if I'm at the 3D model, notice there's a 2D sketch, there's create, there's modify, explore. And you should notice a lot of the tools look very similar to they were in AutoCAD, and they are, A fillet is a fillet, okay? A trim is a trim. Extend is extend. Works the same way essentially, only you're going to see it's probably a little bit easier as we get into this. Just like AutoCAD's toolbar or panels, if you have a drop down like this, there's more tools below it, those kind of things. One thing you will not see in Inventor that you have in AutoCAD is a command line, command window. So there's no typing, okay? Everything's picking and clicking from a toolbar, from a menu area, from those kind of things, okay? So that is one big difference. All right, so this area, your workspace area that you're going to work in. It's fully three-dimensional. It's called your graphics window. Okay, that's where most of our action will happen. You can essentially, it's equivalent to what you would call model space in AutoCAD. Okay, it's equivalent to that. Down below here, you have this little guy. We called it the UCS icon. They call it the 3D indicator. Okay, it's the same thing. It has the same function. That's going to be really important to you in Inventor. Okay, you're going to utilize that a lot. You have a view cube over here. There's your view cube. View cube is going to manipulate you and move you around in 3D space. So that's going to be something we'll be working quite a bit with. You do have help menus down here that'll show you information. So that's the closest thing you have to the window in AutoCAD. Okay, so it's going to give you information. And that's called your message or single line help indicator. And it does give you some information. So I don't use that as much as I probably should. So you might want to keep focused on that a little bit as you get started into these modeling processes. This guy over here, this guy is very important. It's called your model browser. And everything you do, and in fact, we can make that a little smaller or bigger if you want, but the model browser is going to list the elements over here as you create them. So this is going to show you how things are linked from a hierarchy standpoint. They're also going to allow you to go in and edit something very rapidly or effectively. So you don't want to kill this model browser, okay? If you do, close it. Notice it's kind of a problem to get back. Actually, I think they have this little plus over here. You can just open it back up pretty easily, okay? But you definitely want to have your model browser open. We're going to see how that works today. And we're going to see as we get going how we're going to be utilizing this, okay, quite a bit. All right. Any questions so far? Okay. So you're going to see that it works pretty effectively. Like I said, you're going to be pretty used to getting into this and becoming active in it real quickly. The other thing is, see, I just lost my train of thought. I'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. Oh, yeah. We're going to be spending the majority of our time, and at least in the first couple of weeks, in the 3D model tab and the sketch tab. Possibly go into tools a little bit, but primarily it's going to be 3D modeling and sketch. And then in a week or two, I'm going to get you into the annotate tab, where you would do some other things like dimensioning and those kind of things. Okay, so, but for today, it'll kind of just pretty much be 3D model and sketch. Also, I'll show you a little bit of the view. There's some things in view that we'll take a look at, but one of the things you might be aware of is this guy under view called user interface. If you open that up, if you do lose some of those tools, that's because they got closed, and you can notice you can open them or close them. So for instance, if you lose your view cube, you can go to the view, user interface, and you can open it back up. Okay, so that's something that you definitely want to know how to do, okay? All right, let's look at the pointing and all of that stuff. The mouse is going to be functionally pretty similar to the way AutoCAD is. So your left click button is basically a selection tool. So if you come up here and you say, you know, left click there, it's going to select that. If I go to line, it'll select that. So that's pretty much a selection tool. Your right mouse button is going to function like an enter key. Okay, so it's going to be kind of like I'm accepting something. It will also, by the way, right mouse will give me a group of shortcuts. If you right click, notice what you get. These are shortcut menus in Inventor. So you have these type of shortcuts, but you also have these. These are a little different in Inventor. So they're both kind of the same thing. Depending on what you're doing, the types of shortcuts and the groups of shortcuts will be different. So if I'm in the middle of a 2D sketch and I right click, I'm going to get a different menu grouping than what you see here. Okay. Those are very, very, very convenient though. Okay. Very convenient. Your middle mouse key functions like the middle mouse key in AutoCAD. If you roll it in or you roll it out, you're zooming in and out, although it's reversed to AutoCAD. Okay. So you're going to see that. Zooming in and zooming out in AutoCAD and vice versa. If you hold the mouse wheel down, the mouse wheel is a pan. Okay, so it's a pan. So we're gonna see more of that as we get into this. Canceling any command is just like AutoCAD. You hit the escape key. So if you're in something and you don't know what you're doing and you want to stop it, you can just hit the escape key. Okay, and you might want to do that twice just to make sure that you're canceling it completely. All right, so we also have help menus. There's a group of help menus over here. If you want help, they've got some really cool stuff. Inventor also has a lot of really cool tutorials that you can open up and launch and play with. So if you are really looking for something, you might want to look through the tutorials because they come with the software and they're nicely done. And my son's a real big Inventor guy. He uses it quite a bit, and he told me he's learned half of the stuff in Inventor through the tutorials. So I've never really sat down and done much of that. Personally, I probably should, but they're in there, they're available, they're going to be good for you to be able to deal with that, okay? All right, so any questions so far? Pretty straightforward. Okay, so in that first chapter 7, he talks about setting up basically a project file in an environment. Basically what it's doing is it's just setting up a folder that will dump everything, all your projects into that. I'm not going to take you through that. If you want to do that, you can. Primarily, I would say while you're working here at the college, you probably just want to dump everything to your My Documents section, or you could create another folder somewhere like out on the desktop and you can dump the stuff there. But just make sure you know where it's going. Okay, that'll be the one thing that'll be pretty important. Okay, so let's talk about this concept of parametric editing. So parametric editing is a little different concept than it was in AutoCAD. First of all, we don't have to be really precise. Everything we're going to draw is just sketches. And literally, it's just a sketch. You're not going to worry about dimensions or anything. You're just going to go in there. If you want a rectangle, you just loosely generate a rectangle. Once you get that rectangle drawn, though, then you're going to apply either what we call constraints or dimensions. Okay, so constraints are going to be things like, is this line perpendicular to that line? Or are these two lines parallel? Those kind of things. And as a matter of fact, while you're sketching, I'm going to show you there are constraints that are going to pop up. You also have snaps, endpoints, midpoints, tangents, those kind of things are built in there. But then you have the aspect of driving the part with dimensions. So we're going to add little simple dimensions to our sketches, and then we'll drive that and clean it up. So you start out with a sketch, very rough, then you apply constraints and dimensions, and then the next thing will be to take that part and do something with it, such as extrude it, which means bring it out this way in a Z direction. Okay? Or I could rotate it, or I could do what's called revolve it. So if you drew something that has a revolution kind of curve, such as maybe a wine goblet, you could draw just a half of that wine goblet and you could revolve it about an axis. And what it'll do is create that revolution. So there's going to be a lot of different things we'll get into with that. And then you're going to have things like dealing with relationships to complete that thing. And then ultimately then you can create a design document, okay, which is what we'll be doing after we create our parts. Then we'll be doing a design document. So I'm going to take you through the process of generating a sketch, driving it a little bit, forcing some relationships between sketches, and then actually show you how to do a drawing. Okay, you're going to see this is pretty simple stuff as we get into this. Okay, so to make sure everybody's on the same page, here's what I want to do. You can just close this part down below where it says part 1 or whatever. Just hit that X and it should bring you back to this screen. Okay, so we just close that file. We're going to go to new here. And what I want to do is notice there are basically 3 more or less templates. So under the templates, you should see ENUS, and then you have English, and then you have metric, and then you have mold design. Okay, so those are all a little different. So you definitely want to make sure you start out with the proper template, because it's really hard. If you start out metrically, I don't think you can really even make it back into an imperial system. What's up? What's wrong? Close this part first. Okay, I'll go up to here. No, okay, that'll work too. Up here. No, up here. There. No, go up to the new. Up here. Yeah. All right. You're right there. Don't do anything yet. Okay. All right. So you gotta make sure you get the right template. Okay. So for this first part, we're going to generate it under, we're going to do it under an English. So we're going to go to the English template sets, and then notice whether you're creating a part, or you're creating an assembly, or you're creating a drawing file. So we're going to do a part. So this will be an IPT file. We're going to do the standard, and then we're going to hit create. So that's probably really the most important part, because if you start out metrically and you're not supposed to be metric, don't continue. Dump the file right away and then start over with the proper template, okay? Because everything will be wrong at that point. All right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to generate a part. We're going to go through this. We're going to primarily use the 3D model and also the sketch section. And we're going to start out by doing what's called a sketch. So in a sketch, you basically have 3 planes you can work on, okay? And that's called your sketch plane. Now, you can have multiple sketch planes, but you have 3 basic ones when you start: an XY plane, an XZ plane, and a YZ plane. Okay? All right, so we're going to have 3 sketch planes that you typically start in, one of the 3. So when you're doing a sketch is always a 2D thing. But from that point, then we'll be able to extrude it, so we'll make it 3D eventually, but we're going to always start out from a 2D mode. Now, probably the biggest thing as you get into Inventor is deciding, well, what plane do I start in? And, you know, if I have a part like this, do I start out with this sketch and extrude it this way? Or do I start out with this sketch and I extrude it that way? So that's up to you. It just depends on kind of what you're doing. Okay. So we're going to do a very simple part. If you have the book, follow along with me. We're on like 7-1. I hope everybody has their book because you're going to need them for these labs. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is generate a sketch. So we're going to come over here and do what's called a 2D sketch. You're going to click on that, and you're going to see your planes available to you now. All right. So don't click on anything. Just bring your cursor over to one of the planes. It'll kind of highlight, and it'll show you what plane that is. So notice that's my XY plane. This one is my YZ plane, and this one is my XZ plane. Okay. And those are all referenced with respect to the view cube. Okay, so notice when you're looking top down, you're actually looking in what's called the YZ plane. Now, my way of thinking, when I'm looking top down, that's always my XY plane, okay? But it really doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't really matter, so you don't have to get concerned about that, okay? All right, so we're going to start a rough sketch. Keep in mind, a sketch is just that. It's really rough. We don't worry about the shape, just a general shape, but we don't really worry about it being perfect because we're going to drag it with dimensions. Okay, after we get that cleaned up, we're going to put dimensions to it. So when you do your sketch, here's the one thing. You want to keep it simple. Okay. So what I mean by that, I know my guys in the other room can't see this, but if I have something that's just a rectangle and I notch corners off of it, I might just try to draw it very something like that, but I'm not going to worry about the exact values because I'm going to drag it with dimensions later. If I have like rounded corners, there's a couple ways I could do that. I could fill it that sketch, or I could fill it after the fact. Okay. So I can keep it really, really simple and do editing after the fact at any point. That's the one thing about it. But the idea is to keep it simple. Exaggerate certain lines, you know, make them longer than you think they really are. And also angles, you know, don't try to get the exact angle, just exaggerate it. Because when we drive it with a dimension, that's what's going to keep it clean. Okay? Now, the other thing that's about sketch, it's a little tricky. These guys have to be closed regions. Okay, in other words, you have to start at a specific point and you have to end at a point. So if you leave something like that dangling over that, that could give you a problem. Or if you have this, that could give you a problem. Or if you have that and it's over top of something, that can give you a problem. Okay, so that's going to be one of the things, and that's actually kind of hard to clean up in Inventor. Okay. All right, so we're going to generate a really cool little feature using a line. So what we're going to do is pick a plane. I want you to just come up here to this plane. It should say the XY plane. Just click on it. So you are now in a front view, more or less. And this is showing you that yellow dot right in the center is showing you where the axes come together. Okay, and actually that yellow dot, there's a Z axis that's coming straight towards us. Okay, so notice we're in a sketch mode. We want to grab a line right here. So we're just going to click on line. We're not going to worry about where we start. We're just going to pick a point, just left click a point anywhere. And notice as you drag it out, it's just like AutoCAD. You get that rubber banded kind of line like that. Okay. What I want you to do is drag it to the right. And if you get it to a point, notice it kind of locks into position. And you get that little symbol. That's a parallel symbol. What that's telling me, it's putting a constraint there of being parallel to that axis. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drag that out. Don't worry about the distance. But when you see that little symbol, left click. Notice now we can drag this up. And if I drag it up and get it 90 degrees, I'll get another little symbol that's popping out, and that's telling me it's perpendicular. So those are called constraints. There's a vertical constraint. That's a perpendicular constraint. We saw the horizontal constraint. There's all different types of constraints. So we're going to use those constraints as we sketch. So I just want you to bring this up again. Don't worry about the distance. Click a point. Do another one that's going to be perpendicular. Do another one, perpendicular. And we're going to come over perpendicular. And if you get it just right, you'll notice that little line that kicks out there, that dashed line. That's showing me I'm opposite my starting point. That's what I want to be. When I see that click, and then we're ultimately going to close this guy just like that. So we just generated this general L-shaped tool. And when we're done, you can right click and say escape or cancel, or you can hit OK. And what that did was just closed or terminated the line command. You can also just hit the escape key, and that'll do that too. Does everybody have that little L-shaped figure in there? All right? All right, so now we're going to add some dimensions. Okay, so that's my simple sketch. That's all there is to sketching. So we're going to add some tools. We're going to add some simple dimensions under this 2D sketch tab. If you're not already there, you should see this guy called dimension. And right next to that, by the way, are constraints. These are constraints I can turn on or off. We're going to grab the dimension tool. Dimension tool is really simple. It's pretty much just point and shoot. So go ahead and just pick that line, left click, pull it down, and click a point anywhere, and it'll show you what that current dimension is. Don't worry about what it is. Just go ahead and accept it. Just hit that green deck there. Okay. So we just placed a simple dimension, just like AutoCAD, but this one's going to function a lot differently. Okay. Everybody get that to work? All right. So we're going to do another one from top to bottom. I'm going to pick that side and pull it off over here. Don't worry about its dimensional value. Just go ahead and accept it. We're going to now do one here. Accept it. And we're going to do one here and accept it. Okay. So once you have these guys in place, then we're going to be able to edit them. But let's take a look at some zooming real quick, okay, while we got this up. So one of the things I want you to notice, if you want to zoom in or out of your model, okay, do it with your mouse wheel. Zoom towards the screen, and what's it doing? What's happening when you're zooming towards the screen? It's zooming out, isn't it? And if you zoom it, take the wheel towards you, it's zooming in. So this is reverse to AutoCAD zoom in or out, right? So you've got to get used to that. If you hold the mouse wheel down, notice you're in a pan view now, or a pan mode. Everybody see that? So zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, pan. Over on the other side here, we have zoom tools. If you open up that guy, this zoom right here is basically what's called a real-time zoom in AutoCAD. So it'll just allow you to, actually that one didn't do anything. Zoom all, let's take a look at zoom all. Zoom all is basically a zoom extents in AutoCAD, okay? So it's gonna show you the full view. So if you zoom in or out with the wheel, you can come over here and you can say, yeah, zoom all. Zoom it full view, okay? Zoom window, just a window like a AutoCAD window. You pick a point, pick another point, okay? Or you can I just hold it, drag, release, okay? There's that tool. Then you also have zoom object or zoom selected. So what you can do is come over here and select that object. It puts it right to it, okay? So you probably want to remember the zoom all. That's probably your best tool. And then you can use your mouse kind of easy, all right? Is that good? So we also have the pan tool right there. That just locks you into a permanent pan so you don't have to hold the mouse wheel down. So all I'm doing is once I'm in that pan mode, I can just left click, drag, left click, drag, left click, drag kind of thing. Okay, everybody getting that to work? When you're done, you can just hit the escape key and you're back. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to do a zoom extents or a zoom all, bring it back to that normal view right there. We're going to have a little bit more to say about some of these zoom guys here in a minute. Okay. All right, so we're going to modify the dimensions. This is really simple. All you do is just click on a dimension. It opens up that little box right there. It shows you what your current setting value is, and we're going to type in a new value. So we're going to type 2.5, and then we're going to hit OK. And it might have zoomed out like mine did, but what it did, notice that that now drove that distance. That distance drove that sketch. All right, did everybody get that to work? Just click on the dimension, open up that box, change the value that's in there, and hit the green check. Okay. Anybody not finding that to work? You're not finding it to work. All right. You have dimensions on there. Hit the escape key. Click on the box. Just click it. Something else. You have to double click for some reason, but you shouldn't have to. I usually just click it. Okay, we're going to set that one 250. We're going to set this one also to 250. So we're going to make both of those 250. Okay. I'm going to come up and make this top one 0.75. And this bottom one, I'm also going to make it 0.75, but I'm going to show you a little trick I can use here. So I can link one dimension to another, which is really neat because if the one dimension changes, the other one will automatically change. So if I click on this guy here, notice it shows me the value, right? Come up here to the 0.75 and click on that. And it now replaces that with D1 or D2 or whatever. So what I'm saying is when I clicked on this, and this was called D2, and it says, oh, well, there's D2. So you want to use that. So I'm going to hit that and just hit the check. So now it shows me that this is a function of something. So if this one changes, that one will change too. Watch my screen. I'm going to make that 1, and you notice it became 1 in both. Okay, so I can do some pretty cool stuff when I get into that. All right, is everybody's working? Did yours work? Did yours really blacked out inside? No, yours isn't going to work. You didn't draw correctly, so let me do something here. You're never going to get it fixed. So let's see, you should be able to see these. I've still got a little bit of that. Still got to get this up here trimmed, but it's not trimmed yet. I'm going to just hopefully it'll work. Okay, see. Okay. All right. How's everybody scoring? All right. Okay, so everybody got those fixed? So there's my sketch. Now, there's something else I could do here. I'm just going to show you this. If you notice, this guy, it might be nice to have that guy locked to that corner. So what you can do is draw a dimension from that center point over to this line, and you can tell that you want that to be 0. And then you can do the same thing from that center point to that line, and you can make that 0 also. So that's not necessarily very important per se, but could be for our design. But we don't really need to worry about that. Just go ahead and do a zoom all, make sure you're good. And if that's good, we're going to finish the sketch by just hitting this finish sketch. And what it'll do is bring you back like that. So now you should notice in your browser, you have a sketch here. So the sketch is this sketch. If you double click on that sketch, you're back into an edit mode. You can go in and edit it. You can do a lot of different stuff. Okay, so if you didn't make any changes, you can just finish the sketch and you're back. All right? Is everybody good? No. Okay, you're good. Go ahead. Okay, everybody else good? Okay. So we're going to now take our sketch and we're going to increase its size this way. This is called an extrusion. So what we're going to do is hit this up here where it says extrude. If you don't see extrude, you might be still under the sketch up here, so make sure you go to the 3D model. We're going to do what's called an extrusion. And this extrusion is going to be driven by the sketch. Now, it should pick that sketch up right away and show you this right now. Is everybody doing that? So what we have are several ways of extruding. Notice you can extrude it to the left. You can extrude it to the right. You can extrude it in 2 directions. Or you can extrude it like a distance one side to the left and a different distance to the right. Okay, so it just depends on what you're trying to achieve, how you want to extrude that. So I'm going to extrude it from the plane over. Okay, and I want to extrude that, looks like about 2.5. So where the distance down here says 1, I'm going to put that 2.5. And notice it extrudes out. When you get what you want, go ahead and hit OK. And you should now notice you've got a 3D model that quickly. So that really would have taken a person that knows what they're doing minimal amounts of time, probably under a minute, to sketch it, dimension it, and extrude it, okay, that fast. Now, this part is really cool because this part functionally has information associated with it. It knows what its volume is. It knows what its surface area is. So I could right now tell it that it's aluminum, and it could tell me how much it weighs. If I drilled a hole through this, it could tell me how much it weighs minus the hole. Tell it's steel, tell it's plastic. So it's very, very cool. We can also look at this thing in different views. Right now we're looking at what's called an isometric view. So isometric means you're taking an object, you're rotating it one direction, rotating it another, so you're looking at it. And you rotate it the same amount in each direction. Okay, that's how you get the term isometric. Iso means equal. So an isometric view is not a really true view of the way we would look at things. Okay, so if we want to see how we would look at things, we can go to this view, and they have up here what's called orthographic projection, which is what you're looking at. If you go to perspective, Notice that's the way your eye perceives things. As they get farther away from you, they approach each other, which was called a vanishing point. So a good example of that is if you're standing in the middle of railroad tracks and you're watching them in a distance, they're going to look like they touch. Okay, that's because of the way our eyes perceive things, and that's called perspective. So perspective is not really easy to draft with. Okay, so generally you don't want to be in a perspective mode. You normally want to be in orthographic mode, which basically means we're letting those rays project parallelly. They would never meet. No matter how far out, they don't go to a vanishing point. Okay? A quick way to get into a perspective mode with Inventor is remember the F6 key. If you just select the F6 key, it takes you in an automatic isometric mode. Go to your view cube and hit the top. Notice how it rotates it to the top, or hit a corner, or one of the edges, or front. Notice I can tool around this part pretty easily, but if I want to get back to a true isometric, the easiest way to do it is just hit F6, and it'll automatically take me back to that. All right, does everybody see how that works? So here's another really cool tool. The other cool tool that you will have is a way to rotate this thing. So if you hit the shift key, hold the shift key down on the keyboard and hit your middle mouse key and hold it down. Notice you can drag this around, and what you're doing is rotating this basically in real time. You're in what's called a 3D orbit mode. So I'm holding the shift key down, I'm holding the middle mouse key down, and notice by the way I'm dragging my cursor, notice how it's doing it, it's dragging it around. Notice my view cube is going right with me, and it shows me where I am in 3D space. All right, everybody see that? I use that tool constantly. Now they also have orbit tools over here. You have what's called a free orbit or a constrained orbit. If you go to the free orbit, notice you can grab one of those little handles and you can rotate it, or I can rotate it, or I can grab the circle and rotate it, or I can grab the center and I can kind of do that orbit like that. Okay? If you like that tool, that's cool. Or they also have what's called a constrained orbit. Kind of works similarly, except there's an axis that's kind of linked in or locked in. But I just like to use the shift and the middle mouse. So it just depends on what you want. When you're done with this, just hit enter, and it'll left click, it'll go. If I want to get back to my isometric, F5, F6. F5, if you hit F5, what that'll do is go backwards in time and all the different views that you're doing. So if you just keep hitting F5, notice what it's doing is it's tooling you around wherever you were in space. But I eventually want to get back to F6, so I'm going to just F6 it. Okay? Is everybody good with that? That's going to be an important, real important tool. Okay? All right, so the view cube, of course, could also be a real quick tool. Top, back, I can rotate it this way, top it. So it just depends on what you use. I use kind of a combination of all of these, but I definitely use the shift and the middle mouse a lot. That's quick for me. And then I use the F6. F6 is a beautiful tool. All right. Any questions? So we're now going to, well, let's look at display modes real quick. Well, if we're in the view tab here, we can also have different visual styles besides the orthographic and the perspective. We have what are called visual styles. So you are in, I believe, what's called a shaded with edges mode. If you go realistic, notice you kind of lose the shading or the edges. You can do what's just called a smooth shade. There are differences in how long it'll take to generate pictures. So you don't normally want to do realistic if you have a really heavy geometric part or a lot of parts, because it's going to take it a little longer to display things. Usually your quickest is probably shaded with edges, but notice you also have shaded with hidden edges, which is kind of cool. You see the dashed lines, those are lines behind. You have what's called a pure wireframe. So a wireframe doesn't show you anything of the surface. Okay? It just shows you kind of the wireframe geometry. You would also have some other ones down there, watercolor, like a watercolor picture, or they have what's called a technical illustration kind of thing. So that's really up to you. I think we're going to pretty much use that shaded with edges most of the time. Okay, so you just get used to that. So you pretty much do that and make sure you're in an orthographic mode for most cases. All right. So we're going to add an extruded feature now. So once we have an object, we have all these faces, those can now become sketch planes. And so what we're going to do is pick this top face as a sketch plane. Make sure that you are in an ISO view, okay? And we're going to go to 3D model, 2D sketch. And notice, instead of using one of the sketch planes, we're going to use that as a sketch plane. So we're just, when you see that face highlight right there, click on it and notice what it's done there. We're going to draw another line, L-shaped kind of figure, very similar to that, just pretty close to it. So I'm going to start out here, and I'm just going to draw a line. Make sure this line is parallel with that axis, and then make it perpendicular. Make it perpendicular. Perpendicular. When you bring it back to this, make sure you get that dashed line that shows up that shows you you're opposite it, like that, and then close it. When you're done, right click, and then you can hit OK, or you can hit the escape key. So we're making this L shape right next to it. How's that looking? No? Kevin? You all right?
It's not a lot.
Not too long. I'm not sure why, but you just kind of have to get it in the right form. But that's actually a different constraint. That's a parallel constraint to this axis is what that is, but that's okay. That's the same thing. Okay. All right. We're going to generate some dimensions also when you get these guys done. So if you want to go ahead and do that, I'm going to throw a dimension up here and here and here and here. And again, remember those dimensions are just temporary because we're going to fix those. Okay? How are we doing? We doing all right? Okay, so we're going to drive this 2.5, 2.5, 0.75, and 0.75 again. Okay? So I'm going to click on here, 2.5. Click on here, 2.5. Make that 0.75 and 0.75. Now, depending on where your part is, we do want to rigidly attach this face to that face and line that face up with that face. So I'm going to throw two dimensions on there to do that. One is going to go from here to here, and I'm going to make that 0. And the other one is going to go from here to here, and I'm going to also make that 0. So I want those guys locked together like that. All right. So I had my part over here. I threw one 0 to lock it this way, and I made one this way 0, so it locks it. So there's the 1, 0, 1, and there's the other one. Question? I put two dimensions from face to face, okay, and I made them 0 face dimensions. So if you draw a dimension from here to here, here to here, this one first, here, with that face to this face. drive that one up to the zero. Okay? All right? Everybody else good? So we're going to finish this sketch. So we're going to finish the sketch. And notice how that's locked out like that now. I don't know what that is. All right, so I'm going to extrude this guy. And I don't want to extrude it up. I want to extrude it down. And I want it to go the same distance as that, which is 2.5. So if it's not already 2.5, go ahead and hit 2.5. But when you like what you see, go ahead and OK it. Now, one of the things I always do is once I do something like this, I'm going to look at it in 3D space. If it's touching or something's not right, I need to see that. Okay. So I'm going to look at this, shift, middle mouse. I'm going to look at this guy, particularly underneath. Look at that. It's all solided together. Since those guys are now touching perfectly, they've joined together. So we have done what's called a Boolean join. This stuff is all nice the way we want it to be. Okay. And if you're positive, you've got what you want, go ahead and put it back in that F6 mode. Okay. And the other thing is look at your browser now, and you'll notice there are two extrusions. Mine are closed, they're collapsed. So if you open up extrusion 1, you'll see a sketch 1 associated with it. And extrusion 2, you have another sketch. So if you need to fix something, you can double click on your extrusion and change your extrusion. Or you can double click on your sketch and change your sketch. Just remember that one thing drives the other. Okay, so if we change the location of this face over here, that part will move with it because we've locked them together. Okay. All right. Any questions? Okay, so we're going to do two more things now, and we're going to finish this part. One is we're going to drill a hole through it. We're going to drill a hole down. Then we're going to notch off a corner. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. They have a hole tool. They also have a chamfer tool. But I'm going to show you how to do it with drawing sketches, okay? Because you need to kind of know how to do both. So we're going to drill a hole down on this surface. So we're going to go into 3D Sketch. We're going to pick that surface. Brings me like this. Just zoom it in so you can see it well. I'm going to go to the circle tool. Just pick a point anywhere on that face and don't worry about its size because we're going to fix all this, okay? So just make a circle. When you're done, hit OK. I'm going to generate some dimensions on this circle now to tell it where it's located. So I'm going to go a dimension from that face to the center of the circle right there, and I want that to be 1.25. Okay. I'm going to change the dimension from the center to the edge here, edge to center, and I'm going to make that 0.75. Okay. And I'm going to change the diameter. Now, this tool, when you do a dimension on a circle, it's a diameter, okay, not a radius. So if your model information is giving you a radius, you need to make sure you're using it right, okay? When you're doing rounds or fillets, it'll be referenced in radius. When you're doing circles, it'll be referenced in diameter. So we're going to put a diameter on this thing of 0.75. So you're going to place this guy, tell him 0.75. Your circle should look like that, okay? So we drew the circle, we referenced it to edges, we referenced its dimension on the diameter. We're going to go ahead and hit finish the sketch. Now we're going to extrude this circle. So we're going to go into the extrusion. And mine is doing this like a cylinder, right? Everybody's doing that? Because it kind of defaults that way. I don't want that. I want it to be a cut. So what you are doing is this feature down here, which is a Boolean join. Right next to it, there's what's called a Boolean cut. So you're going to hit the cut option, and notice it goes the other way, and it cuts down. Okay, so instead of the Instead of the join, I'm going to the cut, and then you have to tell it what to go to. So you can give it a distance to cut. So if it doesn't go all the way through your part, you know, maybe you only wanted a 1/2 inch depth, you can tell it a 1/2 inch. Or I can go to this, which says through everything. So that means if you tend to draw something later on, it's going to go down through that as well. Okay. So right now, if you're not sure, that's probably as good as anything. I'm just going to tell it through all, and then going to hit OK. Notice now, as we look at this guy, we have a nice hole through there. Look at that. You look at it from top and bottom. There you go. So that was a 2-step process. Okay. The hole tool could have done that all in one spot, one shot. Okay, so there's a bit of a difference in what you're doing. A sketch and extruding it, or we can do a hole tool, which does it all in one shot. Okay. All right, so we're going to do one more thing here, and then we're almost done with this piece. Go ahead and do an F6. We're going to notch out a corner here. And this is a little tricky, but it's also kind of cool because it's going to show you how you can use some dimensions. Pretty neat. So we're going to do that face. So I'm going to go to a 2D sketch on that face right there. So I should be able to see that. And we are going to start at this corner. We're going to draw a line down along that line. We're not going to worry about the length. Then we're going to draw a line from the end point of that line down to this face, and then we're going to go back. So we have to make sure that we get an enclosed or a closed triangle. Okay? So I'm going to do a line, snap it to that corner, draw it down that line. You'll see a little symbol pop up that lets you know you're on the line. Okay? Then come back up and touch that little O-snap, bring it down to that face, and then do it again from there up to there. So you should have 3 lines when you're done. If you're not sure, you can do a shift right click so you can kind of see, like I did right there, how that looks. So I have 3 lines. And they have to be closed or they won't work right. Well, we'll see when we extrude. Okay? We'll see when we extrude. Oh, you're in a sketch already. You didn't do anything. I'm sure what you did. So this sketch down here is nothing. Right click on it. Right click. Leave it. Okay, so we're going to do one sketch. Okay, so now I'm not sure what happened. It happens sometimes. If you get a sketch that doesn't look right, you can just go out and kill the sketch, okay? Because that happens. That happens in an inventor. Where's your other part? Yeah, that's. You didn't do it. No. Was it there before? Yeah. Oh, well then undo back and say get it back. Okay. All right. Now you're good. Okay. So go ahead and do a sketch. Okay. Now you're ready to go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to dimension the distance from the corner down to here, and then I'm going to dimension this angle here. Okay. So let me go back to my right side view. So everybody should be looking like that, and I'm going to do a dimension from that point to that point. Make sure you're snapping to the right line there. Okay. And we're going to make that 1 inch. Okay, 1 inch. How's that working? Okay, Kevin, is yours working now? Yep. All right, well, we're going to put this angle in here. So you're going to select this line and this line, and it'll pick up that you're talking about an angle. So I'm going to go that line to that line, pull it out here, and it says, oh, yeah, you got an angle here. We want to make that angle 45. Okay. And when you get those 2 dimensions, all you're going to do then is hit finish your sketch. Are we good? So we're going to extrude this. This time I want to do it as a cut Boolean also. I don't want to take it all the way through. If I take it through like that, it's going to do that. I want to go just to the next surface. So that one right there goes to the next surface. And once you see it cut off just the corner you want, you can hit OK. And there's our part. Notice we have this nice part in here. Okay. Pretty easy. It gets easier. I know it seems like it's a lot. It does get really simple after a while. Like, you may not have a closed. So it may not like. Maybe this is closed somehow. So if your sketch has got like an extra line in it, or it's not closed, it's going to give you dips like that. Okay. And that's the hardest part. Okay. And trust me, even I have a hard time debugging this sometimes. Not that I'm a big inventor user, but I'm just saying. Okay. Is that working, guys? All right. So there's your finished part. You look at that in F6. You look at that around. I mean, that is just think about that, how cool. Drawing that in AutoCAD would have been pretty much of a pain in the butt. Not only that, surfacing in AutoCAD is not simple. Now they do have solid tools in AutoCAD. You can kind of do the same thing like we're doing here, but nowhere near as easy as you can in Inventor. And the file sizes in AutoCAD are going to be way bigger than what they are in Inventor. So that's kind of the beauty of this. So if you wanted to save this, what I would do, we're just going to hit the save button up here. It's going to take you to this. It'll try to do it into a workspace for you. But for instance, if you want to take it someplace else, you can just tell it like, oh yeah, I just want to take this to the desktop or whatever folder. And I can call this whatever part I want to. So if I can just call that my part 2 IPT, mine says it already exists. I'm just going to override it. Okay, and I now have an IPT file out there on the desktop. So you can create a folder like in your documents section, whatever. What I would do is create an Inventor folder for yourself, and then you can always make sure you're saving your parts there. Okay? Any questions? All right, let's take a look. Let's go to the next chapter. What we're going to do is another part, and the author's talking about what's called constructive solid geometry. We really just use that. It's just taking this part, extruding it with this part, bringing them together. That brings you into a part. Then you have 2 other parts that you're doing things, and then bringing those together. And this is your CSG tree in the browser, essentially. Okay. Well, we're going to do this a little differently because this is a metric part. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do a new part. I want you to migrate to the metric section. So you can read this when you get your book. If you don't have it, you'll want to make sure that you get it eventually because you're going to need it. We're going to go to the metric. We're going to go to a standard IPT, and then we're going to hit create. So remember, you don't want to start a part out metrically if you're imperial and vice versa, because you really can't switch them over. Okay. So you want to make sure that you get that right from the get-go, because otherwise it's a problem. Okay, it will be a problem. All right, so we're going to start out with the 2D sketch. We're going to be creating this little kind of cylinder thing. So we're going to start out with 2D sketch. This time we're going to hit this XZ plane, this bottom plane. So you're going to see a top-down view like that. Now mine is rotated, so I'm going to rotate it like that so it says top up like that. All right, so we're in a different, now notice you may still have your other part open, which is fine, but we're working on another part right now, okay? So we're gonna start out by generating a metric. Now metric's a little bit kinkier, so to me, so I'm gonna make sure that I've got top showing up. So mine came in like that, top was to the side. I want mine with the top up, so you can hit that little rotate. Okay, make sure that it says top and it says you can read the top. It says up. Okay, is everybody good? So we're going to generate a rectangle. You're just going to pick a point. Make sure you lock it to the edge of the thing and bring it in like that. Don't worry about its size, although we'll probably have to size it. Brings in a really simple, nice rectangle. All right, and we are going to dimension this. I'm going to dimension this, and I'm going to select that feature and just bring it down. Go ahead and accept it, and we're going to do this one the same way, and go ahead and accept it. So we should have two there. All right. So I'm going to change mine significantly. I'm going to make mine 75 on the base, 50 on this edge. Okay, so I'm going to click on that, make it 75. My picture is going to really kind of wang out, and I'm going to make that 50. All right, any questions? We're good? Now, if we wanted to lock this thing down to this corner, because mine moved, I can do that pretty simply. Remember, all I'd have to do is take this dimension and lock that dimension from that point to that point. And whatever that distance is, I could make that 0. Okay. You can also, it's pretty cool in those dimensions, you can do math. So you can take, like I said, I could take this dimension divided by 2 plus 20, something like that. But whatever you do here, I'm just making it, make sure that you're 75 and 50. Those are the only key things.
Mine came out with
Came out what? We'll just do a zoom extent. Okay, well, what we can do is we can lock this. That's it. Make that 2.0. You gotta click it first. Okay. All right, we good? So we got this rectangle. We're going to extrude this rectangle. So we are done with this. Finish the sketch. We see that guy like that. We're going to go into extrusion. And we're going to extrude it up like it's showing. So I like the direction, but I think the size I want to make a little bit different. I want to make this 15 millimeters. So I'm going to go with 15 millimeters up like that. And once you do that, then hit OK. So again, over on your CSG tree, you've got your extrusion and you got your sketch. And those are two things that are locked together. So I want to edit one very easily, I can do that. So we're going to draw a circle underneath that part, and we're going to extrude it up. So we need to be able to get under that so we can find it. So what I'm going to do is hit the shift and the middle mouse key, and I'm just going to open it up like that so I can see what I'm looking at right there. Okay. Just want to be able to get to that bottom face. So I'm going to do a 2D sketch using that bottom face like that. And what we're going to do is generate a circle. Okay. So we're going to do a circle. Now, you want to make sure that you are locked to the midpoint of this. If you touch this, you should see a green dot pop out. If the green dot pops out, you know it's center. or middle. If not, you can right click. There's a thing called a point snap. You can go to midpoint, and then you can find the center point. So either way, make sure you get that green dot, and then come up here. When you get the green dot, you know you've got it at the right direction. So this thing should be locked into the midpoint on that line, and the diameter will be the face of that, okay? Is that right? So this is the thing we're going to use then to extrude with. So we don't have to dimension this because it's already driven by the other parts. It's locked to those parts. In fact, if you try to dimension that right now, you'll get what's called an over-constraint. I'll show you what I mean. If I try to dimension this, I get this thing that says you already have it dimensioned. So this would be what's called over-constraining, and this won't do anything, even if I put a dimension here. So I'm just going to not do it, okay? All right. So we're good. We're going to finish this sketch, and I'm going to zoom it out kind of a little bit like that so I can see what I'm doing. I just want to see both pieces. So we're going to extrude these guys. We're going to extrude them up. Okay, we're going to extrude them up. So what we're going to do is hit the extrude, select both of those circles or the half circles, and instead of going down, you want it to go up, and we're going to want it to go up 40 units. And then we're going to hit OK. So there we have. Notice what you got going on there. Are you not doing this? You getting this to work? What's that? Oh. You hit your shift, middle mouse, turn it to underneath. There you go. All right, that's good. That's good. Go ahead and do the sketch. Do the sketch. Select that. That's the face you're going to work on. So then we generated a circle there. Okay. Anybody else questions? That's good. Good. I'm going to go up like that. That's what good. Good. Oh, is your dog on? You know what happened? Didn't get it centered. So that would be a case where you could go into your sketch on that circle and you could change that. Okay. So the cool thing is even though you have a little bit of something off like that, it's real fixable. You can leave it as it is for now on that. Okay, but you see what I'm saying? Your circle was never centered, so what would happen is that's why it's important to make sure you got the nose down there. Okay. But we can fix that real easily. I just want to get this done so I give you guys some time to look at this, okay? All right, so we're gonna generate a circle on the top of this and drill a hole down through the bottom, okay? So get to a view so that you can make sure you can just see the top of that cylinder. I'm gonna do a 2D sketch, select my circle. Now it should pick up automatically. If you just come here, it should actually jump right to the center. So just hit that and then drag that out. Don't worry about the diameter of it because we're going to place it at a value. Okay. Once we get that circle placed, we're going to go dimension it. And we're going to make the diameter 30 units, 30 millimeters. Hit it. Okay. Accept that. Once your sketch is good, finish your sketch. We're going to extrude it. This is going to be a cut extrusion. And we're going to take that to all. And then you're going to hit OK. So again, if you look at this now, you can notice there's my part right through there. Molly, the other thing in a case like yours, if that circle, second circle, was ideally centered right on the first circle, if you did move the first circle, the second circle will move with it. So that's the cool thing about this parametric kind of concept. That makes it really, really neat. Really neat. Okay. Everybody getting that to work? Okay. almost done. Then I'm going to show you how you can generate a picture of this. So we're going to go generate what's called a hole. So instead of doing a two-step process where we place a circle and then extrude it, we can do what's called a placed feature. And you'll notice holes, fillets, chamfers, these are what are called placed features. So we're going to come up here to is this hole tool right here. By the way, make sure you can see this top face, okay? If you can't, you can just hit a shift and right click and make sure you rotate it so you get it where the view that you want. Even if you're in that tool already, you can still do that. So I'm going to try to rotate that a little bit. All right. So we're going to place this type of hole right here. It's called a simple hole. Just click on simple hole. And below it, there's this thing that says seat and it says none. Make sure that those two are turned on, simple hole and seat. And then we're going to make sure that the size of this hole is set to 20. So down here, just click on that where it says whatever millimeters it says, make sure it says 20. Okay. We're going to come out here and just select that face anywhere. Don't worry about where you place it. You should see a hole generate for you in that part. Don't click anything else though. Okay. What we want to do is give it a distance from the edge over and from this edge over. So what you're going to do is just come over here and touch that edge, and you'll get a little dimension that'll pop up. Click it. When you set that edge, that dimension then, we want to make that dimension exactly 25. We're going to come here, click this edge, and it has a dimension that pops up. We're going to make that exactly 30. So this is a really cool tool to place a hole with because you give it the type of hole you want. You just touch the face, and then you can put these dimensions off each edge. Once you got what you like, you hit OK, and you should have a hole in there. And you'll notice now in your browser, it's not called a sketch, it's not called an extrusion, it's called a hole. Okay. Is that working for everybody? You guys okay in the back? No? Okay, so click on that edge. The edge. The edge. Okay, see that dimension? Make that 25. Click on the other edge. The other edge. Make that 30. Okay. And go ahead and hit OK. You got your hole. Perfect. Okay, cool. All right. So we're going to take and do a cut this way. Cut this out this way. So what we're going to do is do another sketch. I'm going to select this face. And we're going to generate a rectangle. So we're going to generate a rectangle. I want to snap it to this edge and down to this edge. Okay. So from top to bottom, it knows the dimension, but we don't know where it is left, and we don't know how big it is left to right. Okay, so we're going to add dimensions there. So we're going to add a dimension from the edge of the part to the edge of the rectangle. And we want that to be an exact value. We're going to use 15. And we're going to add from face to face of rectangle. And that's going to be exactly 20. Okay. So we generated a rectangle from top face to bottom face. It's locked this way. We have to just dimension it this way over, so it's 15 millimeters, and then the rectangle itself is 20. So what that did is centered it. It's centered. Okay. Because if you remember what that size was on that part, it was 50. So at 15 plus 15 is 30, plus 20 gives me 50, so it's centered. Okay? Is that good? So we're going to hit the finish sketch. And what we're going to do is we're going to extrude this guy in as a cut until it hits that circle. Hit that circle. So we're going to extrude it. Mine is showing a join option. I don't want to join it. I want to cut it. And I don't want to cut it all the way out because I'm losing my circle. So I want to go to next. Okay, I just want to go to next, hit OK. And there's my cut. So this is all in your book. You're not catching all of this. You can go back through this. And you will see how easy this gets over time. It's really, really simple. The more you do it, okay? The more you do it. Is it kind of working for most of you? Yeah, more or less. It gets easier. Trust me, it will. All right, it'll get easier. And I'm going to show you one thing that's not in the book that's kind of cool. So remember, you could put a fillet in your sketch, but you can also place a fillet on the edge. So we're going to place a fillet, which is pretty cool. If you just go into the fillet tool right here, this is going to be a placed fillet. And let's pop the millimeters up on that to like about 5 millimeters. So then just come over here and select that edge and select that edge. Notice it does this really nice fillet. Just apply it and you can cancel it. And notice how cool that was to put that in there. So that's a really awesome way of doing a fillet. So there's a lot of really cool tools. You can either place them after the fact or do them within the sketch. So the idea, guys, remember, is keep your sketches simple. Keep your sketches simple, and you can apply some of this stuff after the fact. Okay? And whether, like for holes, you choose to draw a circle and then extrude it, or you choose to draw the whole tool, that's up to you. The whole tool is probably a little bit more efficient, but it takes a little getting used to. So it just depends on what you do. You're going to be doing this a lot, so you'll see how this works. Okay? So I need to show you one more thing now. We're going to bring this into what's called a sheet set. Basically, it's going to generate views for me. Front view, side view, that kind of stuff, okay? So we're going to go to a new drawing file here. We're going to do what's called a ANSI millimeter drawing. So go ahead and create that. And it should generate this for you. You're in paper space, basically. They don't call it that, but this is basically a paper space kind of concept. Notice this is already there for you. It's already created. I'm going to show you. We have other sheets up here. So what we're going to do, let me check something real quick. Because we're going to be doing B size. This defaulted to D. Yeah, there's a B size. So what I'm going to have you do is, where it says sheet 1, just right click on sheet 1 and delete that sheet. Hit OK. So we're going to get rid of that sheet. We're going to generate a new sheet called the B size sheet. So we're going to go up to drawing resources, open up drawing resources, open up sheet formats. You should see a B size, what's called 2 views. B size 2 views, double click it, hit OK, and it'll pop that in there for you. Okay. What you're looking at are viewports right here. Okay. Now, those viewports are actually referencing, this actually happens to be referencing that first part, not this second part. Okay. But that's okay. So what we're going to do here, if you see this guy, you can just click on that and move it around. Notice that's a front view. That's a side view, a front view. What we need, I'm going to delete these, but if you just click on that and then right click, you can hit a delete. And that should take both of those out. So what those are viewports. They're just viewports. We're going to generate our own. Okay? We're going to generate our own. So when you generate a viewport, you have to do what's called a base view. That's what this guy up here is. You're going to do a base. Click on base. You can tell it what part to use. If you want to use that part 3 that we're working on, you can hit part 3. You have to save it. Bring that in. When you bring it in, it'll ask you what scale factor you want to bring it in at. 1 to 1, 1 to 2, whatever. That can also be changed after the fact. So this is like scaling it is in Paperspace. Okay. Once you bring in the base view, you hit OK. Then you can bring in what's called a projected view. Click on your base. You get a top. You get a side. And you bring it over here and you got an orthometric. When you're done with all of that, you just hit create. And there's your picture. That's simple. This is going to get a lot easier to do it. Okay. But look at that's Paperspace right there. When you save this drawing file, it'll actually open up an AutoCAD. Okay. So way easier, way easier to create this, way easier to create anything. And if this part, you make a change to that part, it's linked to that drawing file. So like Molly, if you need to go in and fix your part, you can fix your part and it'll fix it on here for you. Okay. So ideally, that's it. You're gonna like this once we get going. It seems like a lot right now, but it won't be once we get started. Here it comes. Okay, so click on it. Bring it slightly. Yeah, you can just put those. You click on that one. There's one here. And click. There's a way to remove that. What was it? Oh, okay, cool. All right. It's going to get easier, guys. It's going to get a lot easier. We're going to be doing a lot of this. And every drawing that we're going to be doing, we're going to be doing a part, and then we're going to be bringing in those for you. Okay. So once you do this a couple times, you'll see it gets real simple. Okay. Well, go ahead and okay. Okay, so now all that color, you can shade that color, you can turn it off. That's one of the shaded mode. Mine is not shaded, that's all. Yeah. And you can, a lot of people won't shade these models because this is what you're going to dimension. But what they'll do is shade that one. That's just in the viewport, you can turn the shading on or off. Yeah. All right, I'm going to pause the recording. I'm going to run over and see if those guys are okay over there, and then I'll come back and get you guys started. Okay. So, I'll be right back.